Oh, yes, it's that time of year when all of the gurus and all the influencers and the little mini wannabe influencers are out there sharing all their puffy, fluffy, motivational bullshit and talking about their life hacks and their biohacks and all these things. Do this, don't do that. Don't touch receipts. Drink that water, but only that kind of water. Turn on that light. Make sure you go to bed at this time. Wake up at this time. Look, that stuff is great. And I'm sure that it makes a huge difference. And if you're doing that stuff, more power to you. But there's an important thing. You want to keep things simple. If you want to have your best year yet, there's a formula to it, a formula that I use and something that I'm going to share with you. And guess what? It's pretty simple. So without further ado, let's jump into it. What's up, my friends? JT DeBolt with you today for the True Driven Podcast, the podcast for the few, the true, the driven, those of us who have aligned and united to become the true driven. And I say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whatever time it is for you, no matter where you might be tuning in from on the Big Blue Marble. Thank you, as always, for joining me here on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course, YouTube, youtube.com/JT DeBolt. That is where I can bring you more updated and really kind of more diverse information, not just the podcast, but other things that I can bring to you. So make sure you get over there to YouTube, youtube.com/JT DeBolt. Hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know and be the first to know when I bring you new information on a consistent basis. Happy New Year. Here we are. At the time of this dropping, publishing out into the interwebs, it is New Year's Day 2025, but you might be listening to this well past, could be days, weeks, months, maybe even further out than that from the time of this posting. And that's okay because this content is timeless. The topic for today is really about how to literally create your best year. But it doesn't matter if this is day one or if this is the next day. It doesn't matter if this is your start or your restart. You can apply what we're going to be talking about today to any facet of your life. Now, I'm going to be talking a lot about entrepreneurship because I'm an entrepreneur myself. And generally speaking, that's who I work with. Entrepreneurs, executive athletes, those kinds of people. So if you're an executive running a company, or maybe you are part of a company, you're leading a big team, this will definitely help you. If you're an entrepreneur building and expanding your business, for sure. If you're an athlete, somebody who's a high performance type of person, stand by to get some, because I'm going to be sharing with you my personal formula for how I set myself up at the beginning of each year. I call it the best year format or the best year blueprint, because frankly, it is kind of a blueprint. You see a lot of people out there that are sharing all kinds of advice on how to stay positive and how to stay healthy. Here's my life hack, my biohack, all these kinds of things. And that stuff's great. But honestly, man, let's just simplify things. If you want to employ some of those biohacks and all those shortcuts, that's fine. It's not really my game. So I'm going to defer to those guys and the people that love to talk about that crap. Personally, for me, I'm about process. I like to teach process. I like to think about process. And the process I'm going to be sharing with you today is the one that I have personally created. I share this with my clients, my friends, my family, and we go through this. I generally do this between Christmas and New Year's. So I just recently did this, like last week, I'm trying to think, a few days ago, really. I'm going to walk you through the actual process that I went through. I'm also going to reference some other folks who have either influenced the process that I have here or have supplemented it. Some things that I've learned along the way of doing this in the almost 2 decades of really doing this. Now, if you've been paying attention over the past few episodes, going back to episode 27, this being episode 29, you know that we've been talking about the fallacy, and really, in a way, I kind of want to think of it as a dangerous path of setting New Year's resolutions. And I say dangerous, I know that might sound a little bit overly dramatic, but for those of us who are committed to living a high performance life and a life of personal excellence, you don't want to leave a lot to chance. It's important to realize that a lot of times you'll hear all of these gurus and all these, like motivational speakers, and you'll hear these influencers and wannabe little mini influencers sharing all kinds of positive motivational quotes, talking about their little biohacks and how they do this or they do that. And after a while, it can feel very kind of clumsy. feels kind of clunky, right? Feels like, man, I can't do anything. Can't touch receipts. I got to use this kind of pen. I got to turn the lights on at this certain time, turn them off at this certain time, and all these things. And we start overcomplicating our life. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with all of those things, but what I am simply saying is instead of seeking perfection, we actually want to seek how we can have the best possible life for ourselves based on how we live our life, based on our lifestyle, and how we can get incrementally better each day, 1% better each and every single day. I don't know about you, but a lot of times when I get on there and I see on social media all of these gurus and influencers posting all that crap, you start thinking to yourself, man, am I doing something wrong here? It almost puts you into a sense of self-judgment because if you're not doing all of the things that they're talking about, then all of a sudden you feel like you're shortchanging yourself and maybe hamstringing yourself for success. And I want to just share with you this. There is no perfect formula, including the one that I'm going to share with you today. I want you to look at this and kind of listen to what I'm going through here. Take what works for you and implement it and kick the rest of it out. If you're like, hey, JT, that's great, but I'm not going to do that. That's fine. I'm making this as I'm basically opening my playbook for you guys because I want you to be successful. I want you to have the best chance at making this your best year, no matter what year this might be at the time of you viewing this or listening to it. All right. So this formula is something that I personally created, something that I've shared with people and given, gotten great feedback from. And the whole point to this is to get you focused. So that you can give your best effort possible. Because let's face it, all of the biohacking, all of the time crunching, all of the batching and the layering and all the blah, 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 all the cute names that people put on this stuff means very little if you're not focused and if you're not intentional. Focused and intentional. Those are going to be like two key words that you'll hear me talk about quite a bit. And if you, again, were paying attention for the past couple of episodes, we've been talking about not just setting New Year's resolutions, but actually setting yourself up for success. And then, of course, having that ability to downcycle a little bit, especially during the holidays or a time when maybe you want to be more focused on things outside of your pursuits in your career or your business. And being able to have that time to be able to reflect. So we're going to talk a little bit about that process as well. I'm going to kind of review that. Again, most of you that follow me are entrepreneurs. You're building your own business, or maybe you're building several businesses. You're looking to expand, you're looking to grow, looking to scale. And so a lot of this stuff is very applicable to entrepreneurs and to business builders. It's also very applicable to executives. So if you are in somebody else's business, helping them build that, you've got a team that you're responsible for. This will definitely help you with that pursuit as well. And of course, for all the athletes and all the high performers out there, you're definitely going to want to pay attention and put this stuff into play because it's going to be great for you. All right. So let's jump into it. I typically, what I do is my process starts somewhere between Christmas and New Year's. Now, I just recently did this. Again, I did this like last week, sat down, and I recommend you do this alone. I personally did this with my wife, but we were kind of separate, if that makes sense. She's got her own business. I have mine. So she went off and did it kind of by herself, and I did it by myself. And the reason I say you want to do this alone is you really do want to get yourself into a place where you can laser focus in on the one big thing that is important to you, the big initiative that you're building, whether that's your business, whether that's your athletic pursuit or whatever. The most important thing you're going to focus in on. Can you apply this to multiple things? Absolutely. You can apply this to your health, your fitness, whatever. You can apply this to your business. You can apply this to your personal finance. But I encourage you to select just one and run with it at first. Then you can kind of expand it out and do those other aspects of your life. You may also find, by the way, especially you entrepreneurs, that while you're focusing in on a business-related target, you may find that other things come in to kind of support that, including your health and fitness. So we'll talk more about that in a moment. The basic idea behind the process is this. It's kind of broken up into three phases. The first phase is reflection. The second phase is intentional. And then the third phase, intentionality. And then the third phase is execution. So let's take it phase by phase. Phase one. Very first part I do is the reflection piece. Now, you've probably heard me talk about this. You true drivens especially know I'm a big fan of evaluation. And if you've heard me talk about this almost in every single episode, we'll be talking more about how to evaluate things. But the process is pretty simple. Basically, you're looking for three things. You're looking for your hits, i.e. what worked. The second thing you're looking for is your misses. Okay, so these are the things that didn't work so well. And then, of course, the third thing is your pivots, the things that you might do differently as a result of evaluating and taking a close look at all the things that worked and didn't work so well. So what I recommend is, again, get yourself quiet. Now, I use a personal journal here. I don't even know where I got this, but it's a really nice one. I've had it for a couple years now, and I like to use something that's physically, something I can grab that's separate from other things, like not a notepad that you normally use or whatever. What I don't want you to do is overcomplicate this. Don't feel like you got to spend a bunch of money on a journal. You can use anything. You can use a composition book. You can use a notepad. The idea, though, is I do encourage you to do this paper to pen, or pen to paper, rather. And the reason for that is there's something to be said, and there's a lot of studies on this. You guys can look it up for yourself. I'm not going to get too deep into it, on the power of physically writing things out as opposed to typing it electronically. So you want to have a physical pen to paper, tactile experience with writing things out. I'll give you the real brief kind of cliff notes version of it to the best of my understanding. When you write things out as opposed to typing, it's actually slower. Most people physically write slower than they type. Most people. And in so doing, it causes your brain to have to actually slow down and process your thoughts. Other people will literally dictate things, and they'll have that kind of type it out, and they'll type out their thoughts through dictation. They'll voice it out. And that's great. There's an element of importance to that, and there's some real value to that. But there is something to be said, and there's tons of studies on it. Feel free to look it up for yourself if you're interested in the power of physically writing with a pen or a piece of paper, or rather a pen or a pencil to a piece of paper. So make sure you are implementing that. If it's difficult for you, lean into it. Embrace the suck. If it's something you love doing, then enjoy the process. Honestly, it's great. So again, I use a journal. You can use almost anything. This is my personal journal that I've used for a very, very long time. I don't even know how long. I've had this for a couple years now. And I basically start off with a year in review. Now, I saw a clip from the Andrew Huberman show, the Huberman Lab, and he was interviewing Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss, if you guys have followed Tim Ferriss, he's the author of the book, The 4-Hour Workweek. Tim Ferriss was talking about his process. He calls it PYR. I think what he called it was period year review, or I can't remember what he called it, past year review. Basically what he does is he looks back at the year that was, and he does just what I kind of described. He looks at the things that worked out really well, things that didn't work out well. He looks at his relationships. He looks at things that he maybe wishes that he had done more of. And he starts to kind of take a look at the year in review. This is exactly what I'm encouraging you to do. My personal process is this. I let my thought and my, kind of memory go as whatever direction it goes. A lot of people think in terms of what happened last week, the week before. They kind of go in reverse. Some people like to think, okay, so January 1, how did that go? February, March, and they start thinking linearly from beginning to end. So beginning of the year up until the current moment, right? It's entirely up to you how you do this. Personally, my brain goes both ways. I will think, oh, what happened in this past quarter? What happened before that? Oh, man, and don't you remember quarter 1 or quarter 2? And then I'll jump to quarter 3 and these kinds of things. So my personal thought process is not linear. And I'm sharing this with you because I want to make it perfectly okay. You cannot fuck this up, okay? The only way you can fuck this up is not doing it. So don't judge yourself. Don't beat yourself up. You don't have to have this perfect. You just have to be awesome. Don't be perfect. Just be awesome. You've heard me say that many times. That's my personal quote. So again, I take the time. The very first part is to review the year, asking those 3 critical questions. What were my hits? What were my wins, right? So what worked? And I just kind of go through and I think through that stream of conscious. Now, you might have several things that worked for you. That's great. List them all out, and then you can kind of journal on those. You can give thought. You can give emotion to it if you want. But the most important thing is to make sure that you are taking a list of all the things that worked. Now, listen, I'm going to tell you guys as high performers, I know how difficult for some of you this is going to be because you may look back and go, that was not my best year. It could have gone much better than I had wanted it to, and that's fine. I appreciate the fact that you have high standards for yourself. I appreciate the fact that you're pushing yourself hard. But this is that next level of personal leadership. Your ability to look objectively and say, yes, these were the wins, no matter how big or how small. They don't have to be universe-denting wins. They just have to be something that's important to you, that help you move your business forward, move the company forward, move your team forward, whatever it is that's important to you that you're focused on. So make sure you do that. The second part to it, of course, is taking a look at the things that didn't work out so well. And again, we have a tendency to look back on this and be very critical of ourselves. We can list 1,001 things that didn't work out, 1,001 things where we failed, 1,001 things that we wish we could have done differently. And while that's great, just be careful that this doesn't turn into a personal self-flagellation moment. All right? You're not beating the shit out of yourself. You're not talking about how shitty you are or how much you came up short. That is not serving you or anybody else. It's very key and essential that you take the time to look at the real critical things that actually created holdbacks to your success, maybe slowed you down. Take a look at those things, because at the end, what you want to be able to do is take a look at your list and be able to go, okay, well, that worked. That didn't work out so well. And what about those things were important? What can I do differently based on this new knowledge? Because if you take a look at both of those lists, what worked and what didn't work, they're going to give you some key and essential information. Basically, think of it this way. What worked is a list of your best practices. Those are the things that for you, they are your go-to. You probably are going to want to double down on those and do more of those moving into the new year. If you look at the list of things that didn't work out so well, those are your lessons learned. Guys, you got to be grateful. Listen, this is important. What I'm about to say, I want you to really pay close attention. It is okay to fuck up. It is not okay to not learn from the fuck up. Does that make sense? So what you want to be doing is taking a very open-minded look at the things that didn't work out so well. And as opposed to having an ego behind it, feeling shitty about it, have some fucking gratitude. Think about it this way. You've heard me talk about this. Go back to several episodes. We talked about failure. We talked about loss. We talked about all of these things. You have to be in the game in order to have a loss. Losing doesn't make you a loser. It actually makes you a contender. It says that you're in the game, just like winning. But everybody thinks, oh, it's only about winning. No, it's not. You're not always going to win. I'm sorry to have to shatter that little misconception of yours, but sometimes things are not going to work out the way you want them to. And I know I'm being a little bit facetious here, but the point is this, is that when you do this exercise, if you actually want to capitalize on the past year and make the new year your best year yet, you have to have the honesty with yourself, your honesty with the situation, your honesty with your past, and take a look at those things. Because then you can look at those two lists, what worked and what didn't work, and you can then create the third thing, and that is what you might do differently. Those are your pivots. Those are your innovations. And as a leader, there are going to be people coming to you asking, how do I do this? What do I need to do in order to win? Well, if you don't know how to help somebody, then how are you going to be a great leader? If you can't even help yourself, how can you help other people? Does that make sense? So you got to be willing to take a whole cold, hard look at this and make a list, a physical list that you actually write down of your hits. Now, I've got a list here. It's not extensive. That's okay. But I made a list of the ones that really mattered to me. My list of misses is even shorter, by the way, than my list of hits. The important part there is because I didn't want to spend all day beating the hell out of myself. I just wanted to look at the ones that definitely held me back from hitting those targets that I had in the previous year. And then, of course, the pivots. The pivots are awesome, man, because the pivots actually help me understand better what I can do as a leader to move my vision forward, what I can do differently as a leader to communicate my vision so that my teams and the people around me who support me are better equipped to know what I need and also what I can do for them, what I can provide for them. Make sense? So that's the reason for the pivots. It's super important. Now, once you've done that year in review and you kind of take a look at the year that was, What I love to do is take a little bit of a break. I'll usually get up from where I'm sitting, and kind of shake get the blood going a little bit. Go outside, grab a little bit of fresh air or whatever you need to do. Grab some sunshine if it's sunny for you, and then come back to the next piece. I also, by the way, did this in a brewery, a brew pub. I basically think of it like a date with yourself. You can take yourself out for a beer, a coffee, a tea, take yourself out for a bowl of soup. It doesn't really matter, but definitely physically get up and leave the place that you normally work or live in. Don't do this at home when you've got distractions. Hey, can you help me with this? Your kids, your spouse, whatever the thing might be, dogs are barking. Take yourself out for a date. All right. I did this over a little bit of lunch and a couple beers, actually. And it was awesome because in the process of going through what worked and what didn't work, and then the pivots, I basically got up, took a quick break, came back to reset for the next section. That next section was me reevaluating my big four: my values, my vision, my mission, and my purpose. So that's going to be the next part of this. Step 2 is to actually sit down and write out what your values are. Now, you might know these off the top of your head, like basically like your social security number or your own last name. But the point is to write them out again. This serves as both a reminder and a reinforcement of what your values are, so that as you're planning for your new year is guided by those values. You don't take them for granted. You don't take any of this for granted. True leaders know that we have to keep this forefront in our mind. We have to be diligent with it. We have to have that fidelity to it so that it doesn't slip through the cracks. We don't take it for granted. All right. So you go through the values, then you relook at your vision. Most important thing about your vision, guys, is it's going to change. It will actually morph over time. You are not static. You are not sitting still. You are actually moving on a continual basis. You may not be moving forward all the time. Sometimes you're taking steps back. That's okay. But you are in motion, which means your vision is naturally going to morph a little bit. Now, you're probably going to be pretty close. You may look at the vision if you wrote it down last year, and it may be pretty close to the vision as you see it today. But 9 times out of 10, chances are pretty high that you are going to have a slight modification, maybe a refinement to your vision. So just write out what your vision is. Don't worry about getting it right. Don't look up what is a vision statement and how should it sound. Just make it sound what you want it to sound like. Okay? Your vision is your vision. That's all that matters. So you write it out. It could be a sentence, could be a paragraph, but it doesn't have to be some long drawn out prose. Just something that you can look at that feels right for you. That's your vision. Then, of course, you're going to talk about a mission. Now, your mission, I recommend being set for 12 months. 12 months. This is important. A mission is finite. It's got a start and an end date. So you want to make sure that your vision is metric-based and time-bound. Okay? Metric-based and time-bound. So what you're not going to say is, well, my mission is to be happy and healthy, because those are experiences. Those are feelings. It's kind of an internal thing. Instead, you might say, in the next calendar year, we are going to execute $12 million extra in business, for instance, or we're going to hit a certain revenue mark of 25 million or whatever the thing might be by, December 31st of this year. The whole point is that you have boundaries to it. You actually have bookends. You've got the start and the end date, plus you have a tangible, externally verifiable, and shareable metric that you can share with the people that support you, your teams, etc., so that they understand what the mission is. The ability to communicate the mission is huge for leadership, and that's something that you're going to want to be clear on as a leader. And then, of course, purpose. Now, in this case, when we talk about purpose in the Big Four, we're talking about approaching life and your missions with a sense of purpose, that inner drive that is only there for true drivens, not the bullshit rah-rah motivation, right? But in this case, you want to be talking about, what is the purpose of the mission? What are we doing this for? The purpose is not a why, it's an actual what. Why is a fairy tale. It's a weak ass word. So just drop that out of your lexicon. We'll talk more about that in another episode. But your purpose, or the purpose in this case of the mission, that's what you want to be clear on for yourself. So take this time to reflect on that, journal on that, and put it in your journal. Once that's done, we have basically accomplished, I would say, 60% of this best year blueprint. The most important parts are the year in review, learning from what we were accomplished or missed, and then coming up with our pivots, but then reacquainting ourselves with our big four, our values, our vision, our mission, and our purpose. Now that we've done those two very important components, we can do the next part, and that is the actual BEST, B-E.S.T formula. So, you know me, I'm a Navy pilot. I love acronyms. We're going to use acronyms every time we can, because it takes something that can be sometimes big and daunting and distills it down to what's really important and crucial. So let's talk about that. For you to have your best year, it comes down to four things: behaviors, experiences, standards, and targets. So let's take each one at a time. I will sit down and think about the behaviors that help me have a great year. What were those things? For me, a lot of it was conviction, discipline, self-honor, these types of things. You can also look at behaviors that maybe you would like to bring into your life in this year. Again, this is different than New Year's resolutions. A lot of times people go, well, this year I'm going to be more disciplined. I'm going to eat healthier, right? Well, what behaviors actually drive that? What does that then mean? Does it mean that you're more punctual? Does it mean that you're more disciplined with waking up in the morning or going to bed at night? Does it mean that you're more earnest in what you put inside your body? Make sense? So you want to look at behaviors and list those behaviors out. Whatever words work for you is fine. It could be one word or it could be a couple put together. But the whole point is you want to be able to say, look, accountability, that's one of my behaviors. It's something that you hold near and dear. It could be really close to your values. In fact, I recommend that they are. But your very first piece is, what are the behaviors that are driving your success currently, and ones that you're either going to expand upon or add in the new year. Behaviors are everything, my friend. They actually drive everything you do. And you've heard me probably talk about the performance cycle more than a few times. We will do a separate podcast on that. You can go back. I've done some podcast episodes on it in the past. But basically, your behaviors are a mix of actions and energy. Think about behaviors. An action is something you just kind of do, right? Maybe driving a car, you don't think too much about what you're doing, or, drinking a glass of water. You don't have to overthink that actual thing. That's just an action. But a behavior is an intentional action with energy, emotion, and intention behind it. That's the difference. A behavior is something that you are actually you are present for. You are intentionally doing. That's the difference between a behavior and an action. So think about what those behaviors are. How the fuck do you want to show up? How are you going to show up differently this year? How are you going to show up differently for your teams? How are you going to show up differently for yourself? That's what a behavior is. So you want to make a list of that. The next part of that is the E in BEST, and that's experiences. This is key and essential because a lot of times people talk about outcomes that they want to have. I want to hit this revenue target, or I want to get to this body weight. I want to get to this certain level of strength, or this certain level of performance in my business, my body, my career, whatever the thing might be. They're talking about outcomes. And I love that. We'll get to that in a second. But I really want you to get clear on the experiences that you want to have. Look, we got one shot at this fucking thing called life. Let's make it fucking amazing. So what experiences do you want to have? Do you want to travel more? And where to? Do you want to take up a new hobby? You want to learn to play the guitar, do jujitsu? Do you want to give back more? Start your philanthropic pursuits? Whatever that experience might be, get clear on what the experiences are. Experiences are different than targets. A target is something that you actually execute on and achieve. An experience is something you feel. An experience is something that you go through. An experience is something you can share. Very, very key and essential. If you got questions on this, throw it in the comments. I'll be happy to work with you guys, but I want you to be clear on this. Experiences are what's going to elevate your life. Experiences, when you're intentional about them and you go after them with intention and purpose, they are the types of things that go from having a decent life to an exceptional life, to a life of excellence. That's the difference. So make sure you're being very earnest in the experiences that you want to have. And in this case, especially you entrepreneurs out there that might be single focused, your experiences might transcend your business. You may say, hey, I want to speak at this conference, or I want to attend this conference, or maybe, hey, listen, I want to bring my family to this conference so that in the evenings we can play by the pool or do whatever. Or maybe the whole point is to not do that. The idea here is to be very clear on the life experiences as well as the professional experiences that you want to have in the new year. All right. The next part, the S in B.E.S.T, is standards. What standards have you set for yourself? Now, this part, I believe, is one of the fulcrums of success. How you approach this next part will make a fucking huge difference in your whole life. So, what standards are you currently living at? What are you tolerating that is not serving you? What standards are you striving for but maybe coming up short on? What standards are absolutely serving you? Where do you hold yourself to a high standard and that is serving you in your business or your life? Take a look at those. Sometimes it could be, say, impeccable with my actions and words, right? That's something I wrote down. There's all kinds of other things. Timeliness, priority, sticking to the priorities, and these kinds of things, punctuality. The reason that I put those on there is because I remind myself that those are areas of strength for me. Those are things that people look to me and say, hey, that's what we can count on JT for. So make sure you're writing down not just the standards that you currently have and that are serving you, but maybe some standards that you also want to add. And there are a few things. I got a few things on here of mine that are definite standards that I'm going to hold myself to that will benefit my team, my crew, as well as my family. All right. And then finally, the T in B.E.S.T is your targets. This is the part that I think everybody mostly goes toward, especially when they start setting goals. Targets and goals. What's the difference? Well, basically, you can think of it this way. A target is something that's going to keep you moving on the path to a major goal. So you might say, hey, listen, we're going to hit a revenue target. That's a big, fat, hairy, badass thing that we're going to get after. Well, if that's what you've got set, you've got to be able to break that thing down. When we get into the flight plan piece of this, which is going to be outside of the scope of this particular episode, what that means is you're actually going to flight plan, just like we did as naval aviators, from the target all the way back, kind of reverse engineering back from our launch point, our departure point, and start setting up those little checkpoints along that flight plan. It is the exact same thing with a major goal. If you've got a major goal, you're going to have that thing set for a specific date. Now, it may or may not be the end of the year. That's okay. I talked about this in a previous episode. You may have a target, I should say a major goal that you have set for yourself for 2024 that happens prior to the end of the year. It may even happen prior to Q4, quarter four of the year. And that's okay. But you're not going to jump from day one straight to that goal, likely, especially if it's a big, challenging goal, which I know a lot of you true drivens, you're pushing the shit out of yourself. And I love that. I admire that. And at the same time, we got to be pragmatic about this. So what I recommend is you set targets. Your targets can be quarterly, by the way, and they absolutely want to support the big goal that you have for yourself by the end of the year. One major initiative, one major goal. Go back to the mission that you set. That's probably going to be the main thing that you're trying to achieve, or that you're here to achieve, rather. The targets are how you break that mission down into bite-sized chunks. That's it. Now, what I would say about the targets is do not overthink this, and also don't feel like you have to get all of them set today. A lot of this stuff will unfold as you build out your flight plan to success. If you guys have ever read my book, you know, I talk through that a little bit. It's a little bit like thinking, just like you're planning a flight or walking your way backwards. You basically say, okay, if I'm going to hit this thing by 31 December, what are the key and critical tasks that have to happen in order for us to get that accomplished? Think of it like dominoes. You got to set up a bunch of little dominoes, and one domino falls, the next one knocks over, the next one knocks over, and so on. That's what a target is. So your targets are like your little dominoes or your little checkpoints. If you've ever been on a road trip, you know that you're going to have certain points where you pull over to get fuel, grab a bite to eat, rest, do the thing you got to do. You get my idea, right? Those are little targets. You're going to hit those little checkpoints on your way to your ultimate destination. So that's the way you break things down to have your best year. Best year, B.E.S.T, is behaviors, experiences, standards, and targets. When you get clear on those 4 things, my friend, everything changes. How you show up to your thing, how you work with and deal with disappointments and setbacks, how you stay disciplined. This is how you do it. It's a formula to help you do that exact same thing. Is it fun? Maybe. Is it supposed to be fun? Not really. Are you going to feel motivated? Probably not, because this is not motivation. This is hard fucking work. How long does this take? It takes as long as you want it to take. This whole process for me, I mean, I took breaks to eat and things like that. Took about 2 hours. It can take less time. It might take more. The point is, don't judge it. I would block out a couple of hours, maybe a full half day for yourself. This is important work that you're doing. And if you're watching this on New Year's Day, don't think, oh my gosh, I should have done this last week like JT did. You can do this anytime. You can do this at the end of a quarter. The most important thing is to stay fluid, is to stay, flexible on things. Because if you're not getting where you want to go in business and life, it's not about staying disappointed. It's about feeling the disappointment and then getting clear on what's working and what's not working so that you can create a pivot plan in order to hit the target and stay on track. That's it. So it really comes down to that. Now, once you've done that work, you then have all the components you need to start building out an actual flight plan, which we'll talk more about in a future episode. But the key to it is this. You want to be able to sit down and do the prior year review, just like what Tim Ferriss was talking about on the Andrew Huberman show. You want to be able to take a look back at the previous year. You can do this each quarter. You can do it at the end of each month, as a matter of fact, and take a look and do that evaluation of what worked, what didn't work, and the pivots that you might make to do things better. Next part, review your big 4, your values, your vision, your mission, and your purpose. You put those things into context as it pertains to the year upcoming, and you're going to have a fantastic year. You're going to step out with not just more confidence, but more clarity and more conviction. And the clarity and conviction is the energy that you need to not only get started, but to stay on track when everybody else falls off track with their motivation and their fucking New Year's resolutions by mid-February or mid-January. Actually, they don't even get to February. This is going to keep you on track throughout the entire year. Again, I really encourage you guys to put this into a journal. Make sure that you do this in a physical thing that you can access. When you physically write, there's something interesting about the hand and eye coordination, the brain and the body, writing things out. It's that collaborative piece where the brain and the body are kind of working together. But most importantly is you have something physical and tangible that you can come back to, you can review, you can take a look at it on a continual basis and refine it. So important to be able to do that. And that, my friend, is how you are going to have the best year yet. So if you got some value from this, throw it in the comment section. Share this message far and wide with other true drivens that you know could use it. This is going to be an awesome year, not because you say so and not because you're feeling great, but because you are going to command it to be so. Your execution, your follow through, your focus, your clarity, and your conviction are the things that will make it so. And we're going to have an awesome year. So let's get together. Let's unite. Let's make this a fucking awesome year together. And make sure, of course, as always, you're sharing your wins and your defeats so that we can help you along the way. And remember, no matter what course you fly in life, fly high, fly fast, fly far, stay driven.